The war on grace. A brutal conflict leaves the planet devastated. The war on the planet Grace had been a brutal, grinding conflict of attrition between two powerful interstellar factions. What was once a lush, vibrant world had been reduced to a desolate wasteland, a patchwork of craters, ash, and twisted metal. The ground was littered with the detritus of battle, shattered armor, smoldering wreckage, and the bodies of both human and alien soldiers who had fought and died for control of this strategic world. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burnt vegetation and ozone, the remnants of energy weapons that had scorched the earth. Amid the devastation, one figure lay motionless, nearly hidden beneath the twisted remains of a downed warship. It was Rokar, a Garm, a genetically engineered alien war dog bred for the Zarnak, a species known for their brutal efficiency in warfare. Rokar had been a fearsome sight on the battlefield, his massive wolf-like frame covered in thick, armor-like scales, and his powerful jaws capable of tearing through steel. But now he lay wounded and forgotten, abandoned by the very soldiers he had been trained to protect. His left flank was torn open, a deep gash leaking dark, viscous blood that stained the ground beneath him. His breathing was labored, each rise and fall of his chest a painful effort. Rokar's once bright eyes, which had glowed with fierce determination in the heat of battle, were now dull and glazed with a haze of approaching death. The Zarnak had retreated, leaving their wounded behind in their haste to escape the relentless human advance. For them, a wounded Garm was a liability, a resource no longer worth preserving. Rokar was just another casualty of war, discarded like so much scrap metal on the killing fields of Grace. A human combat medic finds the wounded Rokar. Sergeant Max Arland, a human combat medic, moved cautiously through the battlefield, his footsteps muffled by the thick layer of ash that coated the ground. His job was to search for survivors, those who might still cling to life amidst the devastating aftermath of the conflict. It was a grim task, but one he was accustomed to after years of service in the Galactic War. Max's scanner beeped intermittently, guiding him through the ruins of the battlefield. The landscape was eerily silent, save for the occasional crackle of a small fire or the distant rumble of collapsing debris. Max had already found several wounded soldiers and had directed medical units to their locations, but now, as he approached the wreckage of the Zarnak warship, his scanner picked up something different, something larger. Curiosity piqued, Max cautiously approached the twisted hulk of metal, his blaster drawn just in case. As he rounded the corner of the wreckage, he froze at the sight before him. There, partially hidden by the debris, was Rokar, the Garm's massive body curled in on itself, his sides heaving with shallow breaths. Even in his weakened state, the creature was an imposing sight. Max's first instinct was to back away. He had heard stories of the Garm, how they could rip a man in half with a single bite, and how they were feared across the galaxy as the ultimate war beasts. But as he looked closer, he saw something in Rokar's eyes that gave him pause. There was no malice, no aggression, only pain and a deep, haunting sadness. Lowering his blaster, Max slowly approached the wounded creature. "Easy, boy," he murmured, his voice soft and steady. "I'm not going to hurt you." Rokar's ears twitched at the sound of Max's voice, and he let out a low whine, a sound that tugged at Max's heartstrings, reminding him of the dogs he had grown up with back on Earth. The creature before him might be a product of alien engineering, but in this moment, he was just a wounded animal in need of help. Max knelt beside Rokar, moving slowly to avoid startling him. The wound on the Garm's flank was severe, and without immediate medical attention, he wouldn't survive much longer. Max hesitated for a moment, knowing the risks of trying to help such a dangerous creature, but he couldn't just leave him to die, not when there was a chance, however slim, to save him. "Hold on, big guy," Max said as he reached into his pack for his medkit. "I'm going to take care of you." As he began to work, applying a coagulant to slow the bleeding and administering pain relief, Rokar watched him with weary, tired eyes. Max could feel the Garm's muscles tensing beneath his hands, But there was no attempt to bite or lash out. It was as if Rokar understood that this human was trying to help him. After stabilizing Rokar's condition as best he could, Max knew he couldn't leave the Garm behind. He activated his comms and called for an extraction, requesting a specialized medical unit equipped to handle the transport of large, non-human life forms. It was an unusual request, and Max knew it would raise eyebrows, but he didn't care. This creature deserved a chance. As they waited for the extraction team, Max stayed by Rokar's side, speaking to him in soothing tones. He knew the Garm couldn't understand his words, but the sound of his voice seemed to have a calming effect. Slowly, Rokar's breathing steadied, and the tension in his body began to ease. When the medical unit arrived, Max helped the team carefully load Rokar onto a stretcher designed for large animals. As they lifted off from the battlefield, Max looked down at the wounded Garm, a sense of determination settling over him. He had no idea what would happen next, but he was resolved to see this through. Rokar had been left to die on the battlefield, but Max had found him, and as far as he was concerned, that meant Rokar was now under his care. Whatever it took, he would make sure this war got the chance he deserved to survive. Rokar's recovery and the forming of an unlikely bond. The medical shuttle hummed softly as it ascended from the battlefield, cutting through the atmosphere of grace on its way to the orbiting medical station. Max sat beside Rokar, watching the Garm closely as the medical team administered additional care. Rokar's breathing was still shallow, but his condition had stabilized somewhat since Max had first found him. The station was a hive of activity as the shuttle docked, with medical personnel bustling about, tending to the injured brought in from the latest battle. As soon as the shuttle doors opened, a team of doctors and nurses hurried over, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern when they saw the massive alien warg being carefully unloaded. Dr. Amelia Voss, the station's chief medical officer, was among them. She had seen her fair share of alien species over the course of her career, but a Garm was a rarity, especially one brought in for treatment rather than interrogation or study. "What do we have here?" she asked, her voice carrying a note of both professionalism and intrigue. "A Garm," Max replied, his tone firm. "He was left behind on the battlefield. He's injured pretty badly, but he's stable for now. I couldn't just leave him to die out there." Dr. Voss nodded, her sharp eyes assessing Rokar's condition. "Get him to Bay 12, she ordered her team. "We'll need to run a full scan, stabilize the wound, and start him on xenobiotic treatments. And someone get the xenovet on the comm. This is going to be a complicated case." As the medical team wheeled Rokar away on a specialized stretcher, Max stayed close, feeling a protective instinct rising within him. He knew that many would see Rokar as nothing more than a dangerous weapon, an asset of war no different from a discarded piece of machinery. But to Max, Rokar was a living being, one who had shown no aggression despite his suffering. Once in the medical bay, the team worked quickly and efficiently, with Dr. Voss supervising the operation. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she closed the deep gash in Rokar's flank. The creature's physiology was complex, with layers of muscle and armor-like scales that required specialized techniques and tools. Throughout the procedure, Rokar remained remarkably calm, his eyes occasionally flickering open to glance at Max, who watched from a safe distance. Over the next few days, Rokar's recovery began in earnest. His body responded well to the treatment, and the medical staff was able to address the radiation poisoning that had set in from the battlefield's lingering hazards. Dr. Voss, who had been initially skeptical about the effort being put into saving a Garm, found herself increasingly fascinated by Rokar's resilience and the growing bond between the creature and Max. Max visited Rokar as often as he could, bringing meals specially formulated by the medical team to suit the Garm's dietary needs. He would sit by Rokar's side, talking to him in a low, comforting voice about anything and everything, his life on Earth, the war, and even mundane things like his favorite foods or memories from childhood. Though Rokar couldn't respond in words, his large, amber eyes seemed to take it all in, and the slow, rhythmic thump of his tail on the medical bay floor became a sign that he was regaining his strength. As the days turned into weeks, Rokar's condition steadily improved. The once fearsome warg began to show signs of a gentler, more trusting nature, and his wounds healed under the careful ministrations of Dr. Voss and her team. Max's connection with Rokar deepened as they spent more time together, and what had started as simple care and concern for an injured creature grew into something more profound. Max began to train Rokar, not as a war beast, but as a companion and partner. He introduced basic commands like sit and stay, using a combination of gestures and words. Rokar, with his keen intelligence, picked up on these quickly, and soon Max was teaching him more complex tasks, always encouraging him with gentle praise and treats. Dr. Voss noticed the change in Rokar, the once distrustful and wary creature now calm and responsive, especially in Max's presence. "He's come a long way," she remarked one day, observing as Rokar obediently followed Max's commands with a level of focus and discipline that was remarkable for any creature, let alone one bred for war. "I think he just needed someone to believe in him," Max replied, scratching behind Rokar's ears, which elicited a low, contented rumble from the Garm. "He's not just a weapon, he's more than that. He deserves a chance to be something more." The bond between Max and Rokar was undeniable, and it didn't go unnoticed by the station's command. The idea of a Garm serving in a non-combat role was unconventional, but Rokar's progress was a testament to what could be achieved with care, patience, and a willingness to see beyond a creature's origins. Max began to consider a future beyond the war, a future where he and Rokar could work together, perhaps in search and rescue missions where Rokar's strength and keen senses could be put to use in saving lives rather than taking them. It was a bold idea, one that he knew would require approval from higher up, but the thought of giving Rokar a purpose beyond the battlefield was something that fueled Max's determination. Redefining the role of the Garm, from weapon of war to partner in rescue. One afternoon, as Max and Rokar were playing in a small, secured area outside the medical bay, Max tossed a ball for Rokar to chase. The Garm bounded after it with enthusiasm, his movements fluid and powerful, a far cry from the wounded creature Max had found on graze. When Rokar returned with the ball, he dropped it at Max's feet and looked up at him with an expression that was almost expectant. "Good boy," Max said, crouching down to ruffle Rokar's fur. The Garm leaned into the touch, his tail wagging slowly. Max couldn't help but smile in that moment. He knew without a doubt that saving Rokar had been the right decision. As they sat together, the sun setting behind them, Max felt a deep sense of contentment and purpose. The war might still be raging across the galaxy, but here, in this quiet moment, there was peace. And in that peace, a bond had been forged that neither the chaos of battle nor the prejudice of others could break. Rokar, once abandoned and left for dead, had found a new life, a new purpose. And Max, who had always been driven by his duty to heal, had found a companion who had come to mean more to him than he ever could have imagined. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, not as soldier and warg, but as partners in a new mission to bring hope and healing to a war-torn galaxy. Rokar's transformation from a wounded war dog into a trusted companion had not gone unnoticed by the command staff aboard the medical station. What began as whispers of curiosity soon turned into open discussions among the higher-ups. The idea of a Garm serving in a non-combat role was revolutionary, but Rokar's remarkable progress and the deep bond he shared with Max made a possibility worth exploring. One evening, as Max was sitting with Rokar in their now familiar routine of companionship and training, he received a message summoning him to a meeting with Colonel Harris, the station's commanding officer. Max felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness as he made his way to the colonel's office, leaving Rokar resting comfortably in the medical bay. Colonel Harris was a stern, no-nonsense leader with a reputation for valuing results over sentimentality. As Max entered the office, he was greeted by the colonel's piercing gaze, with Dr. Voss sitting beside him. The atmosphere was serious, but Max could see a glint of something in Dr. Voss's eyes, something that looked like encouragement. "Sergeant Arland," Colonel Harris began, his voice steady and authoritative. "I've been informed about the Garm you rescued and the progress he's made under your care. Dr. Voss has provided glowing reports on his recovery and training. Frankly, this is an unprecedented situation." Max nodded, standing at attention. "Yes, sir. Rokar has shown remarkable adaptability and intelligence. I believe he can be an asset, not just in combat, but in other capacities as well." Colonel Harris leaned back in his chair, considering Max's words. "Dr. Voss tells me you've been working on training Rokar for search and rescue missions. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir," Max confirmed. "He has an exceptional sense of smell and hearing, far beyond what our technology can replicate. I believe he could be invaluable in locating survivors, especially in situations where conventional equipment might fail." The colonel glanced at Voss, who gave a slight nod. "What you're proposing is unconventional, Sergeant. The Garm are bred for war, not for rescue missions. But your work with Rokar has demonstrated that perhaps we've been underestimating their potential." Max took a deep breath, sensing an opportunity. "Sir, Rokar isn't just a weapon. He's shown loyalty, intelligence, and a willingness to learn. With the right guidance, he could redefine how we view these creatures. Instead of being used purely for destruction, they could be partners in saving lives." Colonel Harris was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned forward, his gaze locking onto Max's. "Sergeant, if we authorize this, you'll be taking full responsibility for Rokar. Any failure, any incident will fall on you. Are you prepared for that?" Without hesitation, Max replied, "I am, sir. I believe in Rokar, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove his worth." The colonel studied him for a moment longer before finally nodding. "Very well. I'm approving your request. You'll continue training Rokar under the guidance of Dr. Voss, and when you're ready, we'll assign you to your first search and rescue mission. I don't need to tell you what's at stake here, Sergeant. Make it work." "Thank you, sir," Max said, a mixture of relief and determination flooding through him as he left the office. Dr. Voss caught up with him, a small smile on her lips. "You've just made history, Max," she said softly. "And you've given Rokar a chance that no one else would have." Max smiled back, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "He deserves it, and I won't let him down." The rescue mission on the icy planet of Tros. The day of their first mission came sooner than expected. A civilian transport ship had gone down on the remote ice planet of Tros, and early reports suggested that the freezing temperatures and unstable terrain made it nearly impossible to locate survivors using standard search protocols. The rescue team needed someone, or something, that could navigate the harsh conditions and find those still alive before it was too late. Max and Rokar were called into action. The decision to deploy them had been met with skepticism from some quarters, but the urgency of the situation left little room for debate. Max knew this mission was more than just a test of their capabilities. It was a chance to prove to everyone, including himself, that Rokar's transformation was real and that they could make a difference. As they approached Tros, Max reviewed the mission details with Rokar, who sat calmly beside him in the shuttle's hold. The planet was known for its extreme cold and unpredictable weather patterns, with deep crevices hidden beneath layers of snow and ice. The wreckage of the transport ship was located in one of the most treacherous regions, and the clock was ticking. "We've got this, Rokar," Max said, resting a hand on the Garm's broad back. Rokar leaned into the touch, his amber eyes focused and alert. He seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, his demeanor calm yet ready. The shuttle touched down on the icy surface with a jolt, the howling winds outside making the hull groan. Max adjusted his gear, ensuring his thermal suit was sealed properly, before turning to Rokar. "Stay close, buddy. We're going to find them." The hatch opened, and the freezing wind hit them like a wall. Rokar was the first to leap out, his powerful legs easily navigating the snow as he began to sniff the air. searching for any trace of survivors. Max followed, relying on Rokar's instincts to guide them. The search was grueling. The cold was relentless, and visibility was limited to just a few feet in any direction. Max had to trust Rokar completely, following the Garm as he weaved through the snowdrifts and icy outcroppings. Every now and then, Rokar would pause, his ears twitching as he listened for any sound that might indicate a survivor. After hours of searching, Max was beginning to fear the worst when Rokar suddenly froze, his head snapping to the right. He let out a low growl, then barked a signal they had practiced in training. Max's heart raced as he rushed to Rokar's side, peering into the blinding white. There, partially buried under a collapsed section of the ship's hull, was a small group of survivors. They were huddled together, barely conscious, their faces pale and lips blue from the cold. Max wasted no time, activating his comm to call in the extraction team while he and Rokar began to dig them out. Rokar's strength and agility were invaluable, and together they managed to free the survivors from the wreckage. Max worked quickly, administering first aid and thermal blankets to ward off hypothermia. The survivors were weak, but they were alive, thanks to Rokar's keen senses and unwavering determination. As the extraction team arrived and began to transport the survivors back to the shuttle, Max took a moment to kneel beside Rokar, who was panting heavily but otherwise looked proud. "You did it, Rokar," Max said, his voice filled with emotion. "You found them, you saved them." Rokar leaned into Max, his tail wagging slowly, a sign of his own satisfaction. The bond between them had been forged in the fires of war and tested in the icy grip of Troz, and it had held strong. Together, they had achieved what many thought impossible. Back on the shuttle as they headed home, Max couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. Rokar, once abandoned on a battlefield, had become a hero in his own right. The Garm's journey from a tool of war to a savior of lives was a story of redemption and the power of compassion. Max knew this was only the beginning of their work together, and he looked forward to the many lives they would save in the future. As they flew through the stars, Rokar lay beside Max, his head resting on his lap, content in the knowledge that he had finally found his place. Max stroked his fur, grateful for the partnership they had forged, a partnership that had turned a weapon of war into a beacon of hope. The aftermath and ripples of change. The successful rescue on Troz didn't just save the lives of the civilians, it sent ripples through the ranks of the human military and beyond. News of Rokar's role in the mission spread quickly, and soon reports were circulating about the Garm who had defied expectations and proven his worth as more than just a weapon of war. Max and Rokar returned to the medical station to a hero's welcome. The station's crew, who had initially been skeptical about the presence of a Garm, now regarded Rokar with a mixture of admiration and respect. Colonel Harris himself greeted them as they disembarked from the shuttle, a rare smile breaking through his usual stern expression. "Sergeant Arland, Rokar," the colonel said, nodding at them both. "You've done something remarkable. The success of this mission has opened up new possibilities for how we think about these creatures and about how we fight this war." Max felt a surge of pride as he looked down at Rokar, who sat calmly at his side, his head held high. "Thank you, sir. Rokar's been incredible. I'm just glad we were able to bring those people home." Dr. Voss, who had also come to greet them, placed a hand on Rokar's back. "You've both shown that there's more to the Garm than we ever realized. This could change everything." But even as the accolades poured in, not everyone was convinced. Within the higher echelons of the military, there were those who viewed Rokar's success with suspicion rather than admiration. They saw him as a liability, a creature bred for war whose instincts might one day override his training and loyalty. As the weeks passed, Max began to notice the subtle signs of doubt creeping in. He overheard whispered conversations in the corridors, caught the wary glances of some of the officers when they passed Rokar, and sensed the underlying tension in briefings where Rokar's role was discussed. It seemed that for every person who saw Rokar as a hero, there was another who saw him as a ticking time bomb, one that could explode at any moment. One evening, as Max was going over mission reports in his quarters, Dr. Voss paid him a visit. The usually composed doctor had a concerned look on her face. "Max, we need to talk," she said, her voice low. "There's something you should know." Max felt a knot of worry form in the pit of his stomach. "What is it, Amelia?" "There are some in the higher ranks who are questioning Rokar's place here," she explained. "They're worried that his instincts might one day take over, that he could be a danger to the station and the people we're trying to protect." Max's brow furrowed. "But Rokar has shown nothing but loyalty and compassion. He's saved lives, for God's sake. How can they still see him as a threat?" Dr. Voss sighed heavily. "You know how it is, Max. Some people will always be afraid of what they don't understand. They see the Garm as weapons, and they can't imagine them as anything else." "So, what does this mean for Rokar and me?" Max asked, his voice tense. "I wish I had better news," Dr. Voss replied, her eyes filled with sympathy. "The higher-ups are demanding a reassessment of your mission parameters. They want to review Rokar's training, his behavior, everything. If they're not convinced he's under control, they may try to take him away from you." Max felt his heart sink. After everything they had been through, the thought of being separated from Rokar was almost unbearable. "I won't let them," he said, his voice laced with determination. "Rokar's proven himself time and time again. I'm not going to just stand by and watch them take that away from him." Dr. Voss placed a hand on his arm, her expression grave. "I know, Max, but you have to be careful. These are powerful people, and they won't back down easily. You'll need to tread carefully and be prepared to fight for Rokar's future and your own." Max nodded, his mind already racing with strategies and contingency plans. He had come too far, sacrificed too much, to let Rokar be taken from him now. Whatever it took, he was determined to ensure that the Garm's transformation from a weapon of war to a beacon of hope would not be undone. As the evening wore on, Max sat in his quarters, Rokar's large head resting in his lap. He stroked the Garm's fur, lost in thought, his resolve hardening with every passing moment. He would not let Rokar down, not after everything they had been through. They had faced the hell of battle and the unforgiving grip of Troz, and they had emerged stronger for it. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their mission to bring hope and healing to a war-torn galaxy. And this time, Max knew, they would not be alone. The ripples of Rokar's heroism had already begun to spread, and Max was determined to harness that momentum to ensure a future where the Garm, and all sentient beings, could live and thrive not as weapons, but as partners in the pursuit of a better world. The fight for Rokar's future. The news of the impending reassessment of Rokar's mission parameters sent shockwaves through Max's world. After everything they had been through, the thought of being separated from the Garm was almost unbearable. But Max knew he couldn't afford to be caught off guard. He had to be prepared to fight for Rokar's future, no matter what. Over the next few days, Max pored over Rokar's training records, mission reports, and medical evaluations, looking for any potential vulnerabilities or concerns that the higher-ups might seize upon. He knew he would need to present an airtight case, one that left no room for doubt about Rokar's loyalty, stability, and value as a member of the rescue team. As Max delved deeper into the documentation, he was struck by just how much Rokar had accomplished in such a short time. The Garm's progress was nothing short of remarkable, a testament to his intelligence, resilience, and the bond he had forged with Max. The reports painted a clear picture of a creature that had defied expectations, transforming from a weapon of war into a valued partner and savior of lives. With renewed determination, Max began to formulate his strategy. He would need to call on allies, both within the command structure and among the station's personnel, to build a coalition of support for Rokar. He knew that some would be swayed by empirical evidence, while others might require a more emotional appeal, a reminder of the lives Rokar had saved and the hope he had inspired. As the day of the reassessment hearing approached, Max felt a mixture of anxiety and resolve. He had done everything in his power to prepare, but he knew that the ultimate decision would rest in the hands of those who had the power to dictate Rokar's fate. The Garm, for his part, seemed to sense the tension, staying close to Max's side and offering silent, unwavering support. When the hearing finally convened, Max stood before the assembled panel, his back straight and his gaze unwavering. He presented his case methodically, drawing on the data he had meticulously gathered and highlighting Rokar's remarkable achievements. He spoke passionately about the Garm's potential, his loyalty, and the lives he had saved, making a compelling argument that Rokar was not a liability, but an invaluable asset in the fight against the ongoing conflict. As Max spoke, he could feel the eyes of the panel members upon him, some skeptical, others intrigued. He knew he was treading a fine line, walking a delicate balance between logic and emotion, reason and passion. But he also knew that he was fighting for something far greater than himself. He was fighting for Rokar's future, and for the future of all Garm who might one day be seen as more than just weapons of war. When Max had finished his presentation, the panel members retreated to deliberate, the tension in the room palpable. Max stood by Rokar's side, his hand resting gently on the Garm's shoulder, offering silent support and reassurance. He knew that no matter the outcome, he would not abandon Rokar. They had come too far, and their bond was too strong to be broken. After what felt like an eternity, the panel members returned, their expressions difficult to read. Max held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest, as the lead officer stepped forward and cleared his throat. Sergeant Arland, the panel has carefully considered the evidence and arguments you have presented. We acknowledge the extraordinary progress Rokar has made and the invaluable contribution he has made to the rescue efforts. However, the concerns about the potential risks posed by a Garm in a non-combat role remain. Max felt his stomach drop, but he refused to let his resolve waver. He had come too far to give up now. That said, the officer continued, "We have decided to grant a provisional approval for Rokar's continued service, with strict guidelines and oversight. Any deviation from these protocols will result in immediate termination of the program." Max blinked, scarcely daring to believe what he was hearing. "Thank you, sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can assure you, Rokar, and I will not let you down." The officer nodded, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "See that you don't, Sergeant." Dismissed. As Max and Rokar exited the hearing room, a sense of relief and renewed purpose washed over them. They had won this battle, but they knew the war was far from over. There would be challenges, obstacles, and detractors at every turn, but they were ready to face them head-on, united in their mission to redefine the role of the Garm and to bring hope and healing to a galaxy still reeling from the ravages of war. A new mission and evolving perceptions. In the weeks that followed the reassessment hearing, Max and Rokar found themselves at the center of growing attention and scrutiny. While the panel's provisional approval had secured Rokar's continued service, there were still those within the higher ranks who remained skeptical and distrustful of the Garm's presence. Despite the obstacles, Max was determined to forge ahead, to prove beyond any doubt that Rokar was worthy of the trust placed in him. He redoubled his efforts in Rokar's training, pushing the Garm to hone his already impressive skills in search and rescue operations, while also exploring new ways to leverage Rokar's unique abilities. As word of Rokar's achievements spread, the tide of public perception began to shift. The station's personnel, who had once viewed the Garm with caution or indifference, now regarded him with a mix of awe and respect. Stories of Rokar's bravery and the lives he had saved circulated through the ranks, inspiring a growing sense of pride and admiration. Even some of the more skeptical officers began to soften their stance, acknowledging that Rokar was more than just a weapon of war. They watched with grudging admiration as the Garm carried out his duties with unwavering focus and efficiency, his loyalty to Max and the mission never in doubt. One day, as Max was reviewing the latest mission reports with Rokar by his side, he received a summons from Colonel Harris. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Max steeled himself for what he feared might be another challenge to Rokar's status, but as he entered the colonel's office, he was met with a surprisingly different tone. "Sergeant Arland, Rokar," the colonel began, his expression uncharacteristically warm. "I've been following the reports of your recent operations, and I must say I'm impressed. You've both proven that the Garm can be valuable assets in non-combat roles, and I believe it's time we expand your mission parameters." Max felt a surge of hope at the colonel's words, but he maintained his composure, waiting for the officer to continue. "We've received a request for your team's assistance on a particularly delicate and sensitive mission," the colonel explained. "There's been an incident on a remote colony, and we need someone with specialized skills to navigate the situation and provide aid to the affected civilians." The colonel paused, his gaze shifting between Max and Rokar. "I won't lie to you, Sergeant. This is a high-stakes operation, and the risks are substantial. But I believe you and Rokar are uniquely qualified to handle it. Are you up for the challenge?" Max felt a mixture of trepidation and excitement. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for, a chance to prove Rokar's worth on a larger stage, to demonstrate the Garm's value beyond the confines of search and rescue missions. Without hesitation, Max replied, "Yes, sir. Rokar and I are ready. What are the details of the mission?" The colonel's lips curled into a satisfied smile. "That's what I wanted to hear. I'll have the briefing materials sent to your quarters. Assemble your team and prepare to deploy within the next 24 hours. Good luck, Sergeant. This could be a game changer." As Max exited the colonel's office, Rokar at his side, he couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration and purpose. The journey had been fraught with challenges and doubts, but they had persevered, and now they were being entrusted with a mission that could redefine the perception of the Garm forever. Max knew that the road ahead would not be an easy one. There would be those who would continue to view Rokar with suspicion, and the stakes of this new mission were higher than anything they had faced before. But as he looked into the Garm's steady, amber eyes, he felt a surge of confidence and determination. Together, they would prove that the bond they had forged was unbreakable, and that the Garm were more than just weapons of war. They were partners in the fight for a better, more just galaxy. With a renewed sense of purpose, Max and Rokar set to work, preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. They knew that the eyes of the entire station, and perhaps even the wider military, would be upon them, but they were undaunted. This was their moment to shine, to redefine the narrative and cement Rokar's place as a true hero, a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of the human Garm bond, confronting prejudice and forging new alliances. As Max and Rokar prepared for their new high-stakes mission, they knew that they would be facing more than just the challenges of the operation itself. The lingering prejudice and distrust towards the Garm still simmered beneath the surface, and they would need to be vigilant in the face of those who would seek to undermine their efforts. In the days leading up to the deployment, Max spent countless hours poring over the mission briefing, strategizing with his team, and fine-tuning Rokar's training. He was determined to leave no room for error, no opportunity for the skeptics to find fault in their performance. The mission itself was delicate and complex, involving a humanitarian crisis on a remote colonial outpost. Reports indicated that a series of natural disasters had ravaged the colony, leaving the infrastructure in ruins and the population in desperate need of aid. The situation was further complicated by the presence of a small but vocal contingent of anti-Garm activists who had taken advantage of the chaos to stir up unrest and opposition to any involvement from the military. As Max and Rokar's team prepared to deploy, they knew that they would need to navigate this minefield of political and social tensions with the utmost care and diplomacy. It would not be enough to simply complete their mission objectives. They would need to win over the hearts and minds of the colonists, to demonstrate the Garm's value as more than just tools of war. Upon arriving at the colony, the team was immediately met with a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and outright hostility. The anti-Garm activists had been quick to spread misinformation and stoke fear among the already traumatized populace, painting Rokar and the other Garm as dangerous, unpredictable creatures that would only exacerbate the crisis. Max and his team quickly realized that they would need to take a multi-pronged approach, addressing the practical needs of the colony while also engaging in a concerted effort to change perceptions and counter the activists' propaganda. Rokar, for his part, proved to be an invaluable asset, his keen senses and gentle demeanor helping to ease the fears of the colonists and earn their trust. As they worked tirelessly to provide aid and stabilize the situation, Max and Rokar also sought out allies within the colony, reaching out to community leaders, educators, and even some of the more open-minded activists. Together, they began to craft a narrative that celebrated the Garm's role in the rescue and recovery efforts, highlighting the lives they had saved and the hope they had brought to the devastated community. The process was slow and arduous, but gradually the tide of public opinion began to shift. The colonists, who had once viewed the Garm with suspicion, now saw them as vital partners in the rebuilding process, their skills and dedication essential to the colony's recovery. Word of the team's success and the growing acceptance of the Garm slowly spread, reaching the ears of the military's higher command. Max and Rokar's superiors, once skeptical of the Garm's potential, now looked upon their achievements with newfound respect and enthusiasm. As the mission drew to a close, Max and Rokar found themselves at the center of a growing movement, one that challenged the long-held prejudices against the Garm and championed their role as more than just weapons of war. The bonds they had forged with the colonists, as well as the allies they had made within the military, would prove to be invaluable in the battles yet to come. With a renewed sense of purpose and the knowledge that they were no longer alone in their fight, Max and Rokar prepared to return to the station, their hearts filled with the conviction that they were on the cusp of something truly transformative, a future where the Garm could be seen not just as assets, but as partners in the ongoing struggle for a more just and peaceful galaxy. A new frontier, Garms as partners in peacekeeping. As Max and Rokar returned to the medical station, the buzz of excitement and anticipation was palpable. Word of their successful mission on the remote colony had spread rapidly, and the once skeptical command staff now looked upon the duo with a newfound respect and enthusiasm. Colonel Harris himself was there to greet them, a rare smile playing on his lips as he approached the duo. "Sergeant Arland, Rokar," he said, his voice carrying a tone of genuine admiration. "You've outdone yourselves. The reports I've received are nothing short of remarkable." Max felt a surge of pride as he stood beside Rokar, the Garm's presence a comforting and reassuring one. "Thank you, sir," he replied, his voice steady. "Rokar and I knew we had a lot riding on this mission, but we were determined to prove that the Garm can be invaluable partners in peacekeeping and humanitarian efforts." The colonel nodded, his gaze shifting between Max and Rokar. "That you have, Sergeant. In fact, I've been instructed to inform you that your mission parameters are about to undergo a significant expansion." Max felt a thrill of anticipation, his mind racing with the possibilities. "Sir, it's been decided that Rokar and the other Garm will be officially integrated into our peacekeeping and disaster relief operations," the colonel explained. "Your team will be the first of its kind, serving as ambassadors and liaisons between the military and the civilian populations we aim to protect." The weight of the colonel's words sank in, and Max couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement and apprehension. This was the breakthrough they had been working towards, the chance to redefine the role of the Garm in a way that could change the course of the war and the very fabric of society. "Sir, this is..." Max struggled to find the right words. "This is an incredible opportunity. Rokar and I are honored to be a part of this initiative." The colonel's expression softened, and he placed a hand on Max's shoulder. "You've both earned it, Sergeant, but I won't lie. The road ahead will be challenging. There are still many who will resist this change, who will see the Garm as nothing more than weapons of war. You and Rokar will need to be prepared to face that opposition head-on." Max nodded, his resolve strengthening. "We're ready, sir. Rokar and I have been through too much to back down now. We'll do whatever it takes to prove that the Garm can be agents of peace and hope, not just instruments of destruction." The colonel's lips curved into a smile. "I have no doubt. Now, go and prepare your team. You'll be deploying to a new assignment within the week. This is just the beginning, Sergeant. The future is ours to shape." As Max and Rokar left the colonel's office, the Garm's tail wagging excitedly, Max couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and responsibility. The path they had chosen was not an easy one, but it was one they were determined to see through. In the days that followed, Max worked tirelessly, assembling a diverse team of Garm and human specialists, each with their own unique skills and perspectives. They would be tasked with navigating the complex political and social landscapes of conflict-torn regions, providing aid and support to civilian populations while also serving as ambassadors for the Garm. The challenges they would face were daunting: entrenched prejudices, logistical obstacles, and the ever-present threat of violence. But Max and Rokar were undaunted, their bond and shared sense of purpose serving as a beacon of hope and inspiration for the entire team. As they prepared to embark on their first joint mission, Max couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. From the desolate battlefield of Grace to the remote colony, and now to the cusp of a new frontier, Rokar's transformation had been nothing short of remarkable. No longer just a weapon of war, the Garm had become a symbol of redemption, a testament to the power of compassion and the ability of even the most unlikely of creatures to rise above their programming and become agents of peace and healing. With Rokar by his side, Max knew that they were poised to rewrite the narrative, to shatter the preconceptions that had long defined the role of the Garm. Together, they would forge a new path, one that would inspire hope and change in a galaxy still reeling from the ravages of conflict. The future was uncertain, but Max and Rokar were ready to face it, united in their mission to bring the Garm into the fold of peacekeeping and humanitarian efforts, a transformation that would echo through the ages and forever alter the course of the war. A legacy of hope. As Max and Rokar's team embarked on their first joint mission, the weight of their responsibility was palpable. They were not just representing themselves, but the entire Garm species and the vision of a future where these remarkable creatures would be seen as partners in peace, not just tools of war. The assignment took them to a conflict-torn region, where years of civil unrest had left the local population in desperate need of aid and stability. The mission was a delicate one, requiring a deft touch and a deep understanding of the region's complex political and social dynamics. From the moment they arrived, Max and Rokar knew that they would need to tread carefully, constantly aware of the lingering prejudices and mistrust towards the Garm. The local population, scared by the violence and destruction of the ongoing conflict, were understandably wary of the military presence, and the team knew that they would need to work tirelessly to earn their trust. Rokar, with his keen senses and innate ability to read the emotions of those around him, proved to be an invaluable asset. He moved through the streets and villages with a graceful, almost regal bearing, his presence both commanding and reassuring. Wherever he went, the people would stop and stare, their initial fear and suspicion slowly giving way to curiosity and, eventually, a sense of wonder. Max, for his part, served as the team's diplomat and spokesperson, using his empathy and diplomatic skills to engage with the local community leaders and find common ground. He spoke of the Garm's transformation, of their ability to serve as agents of peace and hope, and of the shared humanity that bound all sentient beings, regardless of their species. Together, Max and Rokar worked tirelessly, coordinating the delivery of essential supplies, providing medical care, and helping to rebuild the infrastructure that had been shattered by years of conflict. And with each passing day, they could feel the tide of public opinion shifting, as the once wary locals began to see the Garm not as threats, but as allies and protectors. The mission was a resounding success, not just in the tangible aid and support they provided, but in the profound shift in perceptions that they had managed to catalyze. The images and stories of Rokar and the other Garm working alongside their human counterparts to heal the wounds of war quickly spread, inspiring hope and wonder in equal measure. As they prepared to depart, Max could see the profound impact that their work had had on the local community. The people, once so fearful and distrustful, now regarded the Garm with a newfound respect and admiration, their eyes filled with a glimmer of hope that had been all but extinguished. And in that moment, Max knew that they had truly succeeded in their mission, not just to provide aid and support, but to rewrite the narrative, to challenge the long-held prejudices and misconceptions that had defined the relationship between humans and Garm. As the transport ship lifted off, Max stood beside Rokar, his hand resting on the Garm's broad shoulders. He could feel the pride and satisfaction radiating from his companion, a shared sense of purpose that transcended the boundaries of species and the scars of war. "We did it, Rokar," Max murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You and me, we've changed the world, and this is just the beginning." Rokar rumbled in response, his eyes shining with a deep and profound intelligence. In that moment, Max knew that the Garm were no longer just weapons of war, but partners in the quest for a better, more just galaxy, a legacy that would echo through the ages and inspire generations to come. As the transport ship disappeared into the distance, Max felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The road ahead would not be an easy one, but with Rokar by his side, he knew that they were ready to face whatever challenges lay in wait. Together, they would continue to forge a new path, one that celebrated the Garm's unique gifts and talents, and harnessed their potential to heal, to protect, and to inspire. And in doing so, they would leave an indelible mark on the galaxy, a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between human and Garm. A new era dawns. In the years that followed, Max and Rokar's pioneering work in the field of Garm-human peacekeeping and humanitarian efforts sparked a revolution that reverberated across the galaxy. Their success on that first mission was just the beginning, a catalyst for a profound shift in how the Garm were perceived and utilized by the military and civilian populations alike. As news of their achievements spread, a groundswell of support began to emerge, with calls for the further integration of Garm into non-combat roles. Skeptics and detractors remained, of course, but the undeniable impact of Rokar and the other Garm in providing aid, comfort, and hope to those ravaged by war slowly eroded the long-held prejudices. Max and Rokar found themselves at the center of this movement, serving as ambassadors and mentors to a new generation of Garm-human teams. They traveled tirelessly, sharing their experiences, training new recruits, and forging alliances with communities and organizations that had once viewed the Garm with fear and distrust. The transformation was not without its challenges, however. There were those in the higher ranks who resisted the change, clinging to the old ways and the perception of the Garm as nothing more than weapons of war. But with each successful mission, each life saved, and each community restored, the tide of public opinion continued to shift, until the Garm's role as partners in peacekeeping and humanitarian efforts became an undeniable reality. In the aftermath of the grueling conflict that had ravaged the galaxy, the Garm human teams emerged as beacons of hope, their actions inspiring a newfound sense of unity and resilience. They were the face of a future where the horrors of war could be replaced by the promise of healing and compassion, a future that Max and Rokar had fought tirelessly to bring about. As the years passed, Max watched with a sense of pride and wonder as the legacy they had forged continued to grow and evolve. Rokar, once a forgotten and abandoned creature on the battlefield of grace, had become a symbol of redemption and the power of the human-Garm bond. His story, and the stories of the countless other Garm who had followed in his footsteps, were woven into the fabric of the galaxy, inspiring generations to come. In the twilight of their careers, Max and Rokar found themselves celebrated as pioneers, their names synonymous with the transformation that had reshaped the very nature of conflict and peacekeeping. They had faced down the darkness of war and emerged as beacons of hope, their partnership a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of the Garm. As they stood together, gazing out at the vast expanse of the galaxy, Max couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. They had come so far, overcome so many obstacles, and in the process, they had forever altered the course of history. "We did it, Rokar," Max said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We changed the world, one mission at a time." Rokar rumbled softly in response, his eyes shining with a wisdom that transcended the boundaries of species. In that moment, Max knew that their legacy would endure, inspiring others to follow in their footsteps, to continue the fight for a more just and peaceful galaxy. Hand in hand, human and Garm, they walked into the future, confident in the knowledge that the bond they had forged would continue to burn brightly, a beacon of hope in a galaxy still healing from the scars of war.